Okay, so imagine this. Two childhood friends, they meet up after years apart.
Right.
One of them has become this super rich, powerful minister to the king, fine robes, servants, the whole deal.
Okay.
The other guy, he's just a humble monk. So the minister, he looks at his friend, maybe with a little pity, and he says, if you could just learn to cater to the king, you wouldn't have to live on rice and beans.
And the monk just smiles back and says, if you could learn to live on rice and beans, you wouldn't have to cater to the king.
Boom. Right. That is the hook for the book we're diving into today, and it just perfectly frames this whole conversation. It's not about how do I get rich?
No.
It's about who actually owns my time.
It really is. It's the perfect way into The Simple Path to Wealth by J.L. Collins. This book it's got a massive cult following.
It really does.
But what I love is where it came from. It wasn't for Wall Street pros. It started as a series of letters to his daughter, Jessica.
Right. And Jessica is basically all of us. She told her dad, look, I know money is important, but I do not want to spend my life thinking about it.
Exactly. She wanted to go build bridges or cure diseases. She did not want to be staring at spreadsheets.
Which is how most people feel. I want the result, not the homework.
So Collins had to boil it all down. His whole argument is that the financial industry, they sell complexity. And they do that because complexity is profitable for them.
For them, right.
But for you, the investor,
yeah,
simplicity is a secret weapon.
So that's our mission today. We're going to unpack this simple path and figure out how to get to that point where money is not a source of stress. And it all starts with this concept. He calls it FU money.
It's a great term. It's actually from a James Clavell novel, Noble House.
Yeah.
And look, he sounds a little aggressive.
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's not about being a jerk. It's about having leverage.
I think when people hear wealth, they immediately picture, yachts and private jets. But FU money is different.
Totally different. It's just having enough cash set aside to say no. Yeah. It buys you options.
Okay.
Collins tells this amazing story from his own life back in 1976. He was young, making maybe 10 grand a year, but he lived on like nothing.
Right.
So he managed to save up $5,000. That was his FU money.
And he wanted to go travel around Europe, I think.
Exactly. So he walks into his boss's office, asks for unpaid leave. You just didn't do that back in the 70s.
No way.
And the boss just looks at him and says, no, you can't do that.
And this is usually where the story ends. You need the paycheck, so you say, okay, sorry, and you go back to your desk.
But Collins didn't need the paycheck. He had the $5 grand. So when the boss said no, Collins just said, okay, then I quit.
He just walked.
Turned in his resignation.
Yeah.
And that's when the whole dynamic just flipped.
The boss realized he had no power.
Zero. The boss needed a worker, but Collins didn't need the job. So suddenly the boss is backpedaling, and he ends up negotiating a 6-week leave for Collins just to keep him.
That moment, that is the feeling we are all chasing. The moment you realize you are not trapped.
Yes. But you can't get there if you're covered in what Collins calls leeches.
His metaphor for debt. He says it's like being covered in leeches, just sucking your life force away.
And he's not just talking about the monthly payment. It's the math behind what you're losing.
Yeah.
This is the part of the book that, it honestly made me feel a little sick.
The $20,000 car example.
Yes, we have to slow down here because this is where people lose the game without even realizing it.
Okay.
You buy a car for 20 grand, you think, the car cost me $20,000. But Collins says, no. You have to factor in the opportunity cost.
What that money could have been doing if you hadn't spent it.
Precisely. If you took that same $20,000, invested it in the stock market, let's say he gets an 8% return over 40 years. Any guess what that turns into?
I'm almost afraid to guess. Maybe 100 grand.
Over $430,000.
Wow. Ouch.
Right. So when you drive that car off the lot, you are not spending $20,000. You are taking $430,000 of your future freedom and you're lighting it on fire.
You didn't buy a Honda Civic. You drove a $500,000 Ferrari off a cliff.
That's a good way to put it. It's this total mindset shift. He brings up Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
Made something like $300 million in his career.
An insane amount of money.
And went bankrupt. He knew how to earn and he definitely knew how to spend, but he didn't get that your money has to work for you.
And if you have debt, it's working for the bank.
It's working for the bank.
Yeah.
So step one, scrape off the leeches. That credit card debt at 20%. That is a hair-on-fire emergency.
Pay it off before you do anything.
Anything. Now, if the interest rate is like under 3%, maybe you pay it off slowly and invest. But over 5%, Get rid of it.
Okay, so let's say we did that. We've killed the debt. We have some surplus cash. Now what? Collins says the tool is the stock market. But hold on. I can just hear people thinking, the stock market. My uncle lost everything in 2008. It's a casino. How is that the safe path?
It's a completely fair question. But the argument is that while the market is crazy volatile day to day, its long-term trajectory is just relentlessly upward.
Okay.
He cites data from 1975 to 2015. Through all the crashes, recessions, bubbles, the S&P 500 still averaged an 11.9% annual return.
But why? What makes it go up over time? It feels like magic.
It's not magic, it's the design. An index, like the S&P 500, is basically a list of the biggest, most successful companies. And it has this brilliant self-cleansing mechanism.
Self-cleansing? What do you mean?
So if a company on that list starts to fail, think Blockbuster or Kodak, its value drops. Eventually, it just gets kicked off the index. It's gone.
Okay.
But at the same time, new companies, your Googles, your Teslas, they grow and get added to the list. So as an index investor, you are automatically selling the losers and buying the winners.
Without having to do anything.
Without lifting a finger, you're just betting on the long-term success of the economy.
I love his analogy for this. To explain the scary parts, the crashes, the glass of beer.
It is the best visual in the book. He says, imagine a big pint of beer. The liquid itself. That's the real value. The factories, the profits, the businesses.
The beer.
The beer. That liquid is always slowly, steadily rising over time.
And the foam on top.
The foam is the daily stock price. The news headlines. The panic. It's this wild, frothy mess. Sometimes there's a ton of foam. That's a bubble. Sometimes it all disappears. That's a crash.
But the beer is still there.
The beer's still there.
Yeah.
But everyone stares at the foam. Collins says, ignore the foam. Drink the beer.
Okay, that makes sense. But let's get specific. He doesn't just say buy the market. He names one specific ticker, VTSAX.
The Vanguard Total Stock Market Index Fund.
Right. So let me play devil's advocate. My neighbor is day trading NVIDIA and made 30% in a month. If I just buy VTSAX, I'm just getting the average. Isn't that settling?
This is the ego trap. And the math here is so clear. You're not settling for average. You are guaranteeing you beat most of the highly paid professionals.
How is that possible? They have all the fancy tools.
And they still fail. There's a study that shows over a 15-year period, 82% of active fund managers failed to beat the simple, unmanaged index.
82%.
82%. Because they have high fees, they trade too much, they panic. They're human. Collins has this great question you should ask yourself. Am I Warren Buffett?
The answer is probably no.
The answer is no. And even Buffett himself told his wife to put her inheritance in an S&P 500 index fund.
So buying the whole haystack is actually the smart play. But why Vanguard specifically? Is he getting a kickback from them?
No, and this part is so important. He calls it the Vanguard effect. It's about how the company is structured. A normal investment firm works for its shareholders. They need to make a profit from you.
So they want higher fees.
Of course. Vanguard is different. It's client-owned. You, the investor, own the funds, and the funds own the company. It's basically a co-op.
So their incentive is to keep costs low.
As low as possible. Their interests are aligned with yours. It's like hacking the system.
Okay, so we're buying VTSAX, we're ignoring the foam. But then, a 2008 happens, the market drops 30 or 40%. He calls it the big ugly event.
Right. And this brings us to the psychology chapter, which has the best title, Toughen Up, Cupcake.
It's harsh, but probably necessary. Because seeing your life savings get cut in half, staying the course is really hard advice to take.
It's agonizing. And he shares his own story from Black Monday in 1987. The market crashed. He did what everyone's gut tells him to do. He panicked and he sold.
To stop the bleeding.
Exactly. But all he did was lock in that huge loss. And then, of course, the market recovered and he had to buy back in at a much higher price. It was an incredibly expensive lesson.
So you can't time the market.
Nobody can. To do it successfully, you have to be right twice. You have to sell at the absolute top and then buy back in at the absolute bottom. It's impossible.
And the financial news is basically designed to make you try.
It is. Anxiety sells. Collins says, just turn it off. A crash is a feature, not a bug. It's the price you pay for those great long-term returns.
So hold on. Let's talk about building the portfolio then. Because 100% stocks sounds great when you're 25. What about when you're, say, 60?
It absolutely changes. He breaks it down into two stages, wealth accumulation and wealth preservation.
Accumulation is when you're working, saving money.
Right. And for this stage, he is hardcore. He says 100% stocks, all in on VTSAX.
100%. A traditional advisor would have a heart attack. Where are the bonds?
His argument is, during accumulation, you want the volatility. When the market drops, stocks are on sale. You're a buyer. Why would you slow down your growth with bonds when you're not going to be selling for decades?
Let the compound interest run wild.
Let it run wild. But then you hit the preservation stage. You've retired. You're living off this money.
Now the game is different.
Totally different. You can't afford a 50% drop anymore. So this is where you add bonds, specifically VBTLX, the Vanguard Total Bond Market Fund.
The shock absorber.
Exactly. It just smooths out the ride. He suggests maybe a 75% stock, 25% bond split, something like that.
And for people who want it even simpler.
There's the Target Retirement Fund. It's the set it and forget it option. It just automatically adjusts the mix for you as you get older. It's the simplest path of all.
Okay, I want to circle back to something we kind of breezed past, the buckets. We know what to buy, but where do we buy it? The whole tax situation.
This is so critical. You can do everything else right, but if you put the money in the wrong type of account, taxes will just eat your returns.
So Collins has an order of operations.
Yes. Okay, you get your paycheck, first dollar goes where?
The 401k match.
Always. It's free money. A 100% return on your investment instantly. You never ever skip that.
Got it. Match is secured. What's next?
High interest debt. Kill the leeches. We covered that.
Done.
Next, and this one surprises people, is the HSA, the Health Savings Account.
I always thought that was just for, co-pays and Tylenol.
That's how most people use it, and it's a huge waste. The HSA has a triple tax advantage. Money goes in tax-free, it grows tax-free, and it comes out tax-free for medical expenses.
So it's like a super IRA.
It's a stealth IRA. That's what he calls it. The pro move is to pay for your current medical bills out of pocket. Let that HSA money grow, invest it in VTSAX for decades, and then reimburse yourself in retirement.
That's a serious pro tip. Okay, after the HSA.
Then you max out your IRA. Traditional or Roth?
Quick difference.
Traditional, you get a tax break now. Roth, you pay the tax now, but it's tax-free forever when you pull it out. For most young people, the Roth is probably better.
Because your tax bracket will likely be higher later in life.
Exactly. And then tax-free growth is it's mathematically beautiful over 40 years.
It sounds like a lot of steps, but I guess once you set up the automatic transfers, you don't think about it again?
That is the whole point. Set it up once and then go live your life.
Which really brings us all back to the beginning. The monk and the minister. We've talked about all the how, but the why is what matters.
It is. The whole philosophy is that money is just stored life energy. You traded your hours, your finite time on this planet for those dollars.
So when you buy that expensive car,
you're not just spending dollars. You are spending the months or years of your life that it took to earn that money. And the question is always, is that thing really worth 6 months of your one and only life?
That's the monk mindset, learning to live on rice and beans.
It's a two-sided equation. You can try to earn more, sure, but it is so much easier to just need less. The less you need, the faster you're free.
It reminds me of that quote from the book, "We are trained to be good consumers and good employees, but not good investors."
Yes. The entire world is basically a machine designed to separate you from your money, to keep you on that treadmill until you're 70. This is about choosing to step off.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with. Forget the math for a second and just look at your life. Look at the things you bought in the last year. Are you trading your precious life energy for things that just become clutter? Or are you using it to buy your freedom? Because the simple path says you can't have both. You have to choose.
And that choice is everything. It's the difference between being the minister who serves the king and the monk who owns his own time.
A huge thanks to J.L. Collins for this roadmap. And of course, thanks to you for listening. Go check your expense ratios. We will see you on the next deep dive.